This is a YouTube exclusive. As y'all know, I have a podcast available everywhere that you can get podcasts. While we wait, the podcast before the marriage. This is a podcast where I discuss my experiences while dating and being in my late 20s as I prepare for marriage. This is a YouTube exclusive, meaning this episode is not going to be uploaded to my podcast platforms until a couple of, weeks after it's been here on YouTube. So I hope y'all enjoy. Hey y'all, I have a podcast, While We Wait, the podcast before the marriage, available everywhere that you find podcasts. And this is my most recent episode. I wanted to share it here on YouTube to just let you guys know I do a lot of things outside of YouTube. And I will be coming back and uploading a lot more vlogs very soon. I just need to edit them. So in the meantime, please enjoy this episode of While We Wait, the podcast before the marriage. Hey y'all, I'm so glad to be recording this episode today because I wanted to just really have a more laid back, chill episode where we just kind of feel like we're in conversation. I hope that you have a glass of water or a smoothie or wine, whatever you like, whatever puts you in the podcast listening mood. Thank you for listening to While We Wait, the podcast before the marriage, a podcast where I discuss my experiences and thoughts as I am in my late 20s, dating and preparing for marriage. I wanted to give you guys on YouTube, my wonderful YouTube snowflakes and community, a bit more context and background. If you have not yet gone over to Apple Podcast or Spotify, iHeartRadio, and again, wherever you find podcasts, and listened to my backlog of podcasts, you may have some questions about my abstinence journey, how long I've been on this journey, and what has even prompted me to begin the journey. And so today's episode is going to answer those questions, give you all some context, and just welcome you into what I'm doing over here. So, hi y'all, I'm a 27-year young Black woman living in New York City who is dating, who is going on dates, who is reciprocating the interest of men who express interest in her, in she, her. Take a look at me, me. And I am abstaining. I was abstaining and waiting for marriage for 5 years. I was in a relationship and we were not abstaining. We made that choice and I regret nothing because in that specific time, actually, that's when I was somewhat on the fence about, okay, am I really waiting for just marriage or am I waiting to be in a committed relationship? I started asking myself that question around like year 3, going into year 4. I decided at that time I was more so waiting to be in a committed relationship. And of course, all the necessary conversations were had before we engaged in any of that sort of activity. And when I broke up with him, again, my choice. And I just realized that this man, not only was he not really ready to be in a serious committed relationship, I just also didn't see us going further in a relationship, and I decided to end that relationship before I just found myself sort of settling in something because it was comforting and let's say, like it was easy in a sense. Like if I wanted to turn a blind eye to a lot of things, then I could have stayed in that relationship and allowed it to progress and go on and been there for years. But I prayed about it. I received foresight and I said, it's best that I exit from this relationship. Since then, I've been abstaining again. It's been almost a year now, so I'm back on the journey. But to answer that initial question, how long have I been abstaining? I did 5 years. I stopped abstaining. I was in a relationship. I ended that relationship. I immediately returned to abstaining. One thing that I do know is I'm a human being and I'm allowed to change my mind at any moment. And sometimes you might find yourself in a situation where you just want to do what you want to do. All that I promote and say is make sure you ask all of the necessary questions and talk about what you need to talk about before you engage in anything. I'm not just talking about where your mind might be going, obviously. I'm talking about have those emotional conversations as well, right? What sort of emotional support and care do you also need and require after you engage in such activity with someone that you are seriously dating and in a committed monogamous relationship with, right? Especially if you guys don't already have an established history. There's way more conversations to be had, y'all, outside of just the let me see your paperwork. Way more conversations to have prior, during, and after that have to deal with your emotions and your mental health. So make sure that you're having those conversations. Make sure that you are making that person aware of the sort of emotional support and care that you need after you guys engage in that. That's a conversation I think people miss a lot. We get to the serious nitty gritty, which I feel that your emotional needs are just as serious and to the nitty gritty as well, but we sort of overlook it because of the sort of education we receive around engaging in that activity with any person or persons. And unfortunately, and I do mean this, I feel like unfortunately we just focus far too much on the physical and what can happen to our physical bodies after we do this, especially if we haven't had that necessary conversation, right? And there's more to focus on outside of your physical. Please have the conversation about your emotional needs and requirements after engaging in such an activity. I know I've repeated that because repetition is very important for human beings. It's one of the best ways that we learn and the best way that we retain and keep information in our bodies and in our minds. So I really hope that I have inspired somebody to have a new and different sort of communication with either a current partner, a potential partner, or just a prospect, someone you are dating right now and you would like to go deeper in the relationship with. So that answers that question. Now, I want to answer y'all's questions about dating. How does dating work? How am I even dating? Do I say, hi, my name is, this is our first date, just so you know, I'm abstaining and I'm preparing for marriage? The answer to that is real quick, no. No, that is not a conversation that I lead with. I believe that conversation pretty much makes itself known, one, through my behavior, and the way in which I carry myself when on dates, and especially as we progress deeper into the dating and courting and, working our way into a relationship and then, so on and so forth. I've had a couple of boyfriends in my 27 years of life. I've been proposed to. I've said no. And I am continuing to prepare for marriage. I think it's really important for young women, and I want to specify that young for me, honestly, is until you're 50. I feel that you are very much in your youth, in your younger years, in your earlier developmental years until you're 50 years old. Now listen to hear me well. Obviously, when you big 35, big 47, we should be aware of some things. What I mean is you are still very much a youthful person. Please do not age yourself, especially women. Women turn 30 and think all is done, all hope is lost. And that's not true. I'm 27, and a lot of my peers, a lot of my homegirls, a lot of my girlfriends feel like they are missing out on the train because we are in our late 20s, or for some of them, they are in their early 30s, and they're like, why am I not partnered yet? Not even just married, but just why am I not partnered? Why do I not have a boyfriend? Why am I not in a relationship? Why am I not even seriously dating someone right now? And I would propose, right, that it's that very mindset that somewhat creates that blockage. For a very long time, I had a lot of anxiety around dating and even getting into relationships, not because I've had a bunch of bad relationships. All in all, truth be told, all of the men who asked me to be their girlfriend and I said yes, and they were my boyfriend, and we were in a committed monogamous relationship, they were all pretty good. There really wasn't much to complain about. There wasn't much to be upset about. It wasn't that there were any huge things that took place where I was like, I've got to leave this man. It was more so a conviction within myself and just knowing this is not going to go any further than where it is right now. And that's okay for him. That's not okay for me. Two of the men that I have been in relationships with, now this is like way back, I'm talking about like in college and stuff. One of them is married, amen, praise God, we love that. And one of them has a child. And I always kind of reference these two relationships because one of these men did propose to me and expressed wanting to be married and like having children and everything. I'm not going to tell y'all which guy that is, but he did all of that. And, I was in college. I was young. I was 22 and, wasn't quite interested in doing that quite yet. I knew I wanted it. I knew I desired it, but not in that moment. We continued to date. He continued to be my boyfriend, so on and so on. And, eventually the relationship ended because I just said, though I desire a husband, this man is expressing not that he wants to be a husband, but that he wants a wife and that he wants a child and that he wants to create a family structure in which he is catered to and served. Totally. And I wasn't hearing anything in his conversation that alerted me to any sort of reciprocation. And so that right there for me, after having that conversation with him a few times over, I was like, yeah, remaining in this relationship, as wonderful as he was, I think had I stayed at some point, I might have said yes if he kept asking, only because I would have been thinking very short term and also just looking at what was in front of me, which was a man who I found attractive, who I was already in a relationship with, and for all intents and purposes, things were going pretty well, and he wanted to marry me. So I'd be a fool to say no, right? But hindsight is 20/20, and all these many years later, let's just say, with the information that I have, I'm very glad I did not agree to marry that man. And I share this because I want to encourage women, especially women who are at this stage of their life, late 20s or early 30s, who are somewhat entering a desperation period. And I'm going to say that because I'm going to be a really honest woman about this. Women, we get desperate, okay? Ladies, let's be honest. The desperation is very loud. And I don't blame any woman for feeling desperate in her desire and then subsequent pursuit of partnership, of committed relationship, of marriage. And I'm going to speak in these terms because I'm speaking from the place that I know best. And the place that I know best is desiring marriage with a man and partnership with a man and, God willing, having children with a man, right? So I'm going to be speaking from that point. But from time to time, or actually just kind of often, you will hear me use language of partner or long-term partner because that matters. And that's also just the way that I speak. That I mean what I say, and that's the language that I use. Intersectionality is very important. And sometimes I feel like that language better helps paint the picture and get the point across. So women, we do get desperate, and we do start to operate from a place of low self-respect and really lacking belief systems. And what I've learned from abstaining for as long as I did, and now returning to my abstinence journey and already about to be a year in again, is one, people love to be like, just decenter men and boo boo, and like all of that language is really great. But in practice and in theory, when you really are a woman who truly, truly, truly desires marriage, who truly, truly, truly desires partnership, who wants to be married to a man, who wants to be having children, God willing, and all of that, how exactly are you going to decenter men? I think better language would be, don't make a man the focal point of your life. But using the language of decentering, I think, confuses a lot of women and actually causes anxiety in a lot of women. It also leads a lot of women to go to the extreme, because you say decenter something, it sounds I think it leads the mind to go to a place of complete removal or abdication, like making men very abject to your life. Again, these are just my personal belief systems and my personal experience. I do not feel that building up that sort of feeling towards men when at the same time you also romantically desire them will bode well. Right? I don't think that will bode well for you. So what I practiced and what I continue to practice is that men are just not the focal point of my life, right? But I also am very honest with myself that when I am interested in a man and that man is interested in me, I reciprocate interest that is expressed. Okay? Call me old school, but that's me. I reciprocate interest that is expressed. So when I'm interested in a man because I'm now returning and reciprocating his interest, right? I agree. I'm like, oh, you're interested in me? Cool, because I am also interested in you, right? When I am in that energy, and then when I'm dating that man and we're getting to know each other, and also let's quickly have a definition really fast. Dating does not mean you're in a relationship. And that's something I wish we would talk about more. Dating means you are going on dates with a person. A date is a outing. That can be an activity. That can be a formal whatever. But dating is an outing, right? Something you're doing with another person that has clear, explicit, and defined romantic either undertone or overtone. And I say undertone or overtone because that depends on you, what kind of person you are, and the person that you're dating. Some people are more modest in the way that they express their romantic interest until they feel more comfortable or safe. That's totally fine. Everyone has to know their boundaries, and you have to decide if, you like those boundaries as well, whatever. But that's a date, and that's what dating is. So I also want you guys to understand that when I come here and I speak about dating somebody, or, I've been dating and stuff like that, I don't mean I'm in a relationship with any person. I mean, I'm going on dates. I mean, I'm getting to know people who have expressed romantic interest in me. That's what that means. So, yeah, when I'm dating somebody and I'm returning that, right, now I'm working on better expressing this to people in my life, especially friends. When I'm in that mode, right, when I'm like, reciprocating interest with a man, all that, whatever, that very much does become a focus. It very much is a focus. And then when it's currently happening, like I am in front of that man is in front of me, and we are on a date, or that man has invited me to a place and maybe it's a more social setting, but it's still very much like I've invited you here because I want to see you and I have a romantic attraction to you. And this is, something in my life that I do that's important, or something in my life that I like, that I find important. And I want to share this interest with you. And I want to see how we do sharing this interest, whatever, right? That is the focus. That is the focus. And that is the center point for that time, for that evening, for that day, for that weekend, whatever. That is the focus. And I think sometimes where we fall short a lot as women is we will be in that mode, right? And we're still trying to, quote unquote, decenter men. Well, no, baby, you're on a date, or like, no, that man has invited you out, even if it's socially, because he wants you to get to know his friends, or he wants you to get to know whatever places that he goes to, that he frequents, that he likes, and he knows some people there, things like that. Like, babe, you can't be decentering him in that moment. He absolutely is your center of focus, not attention, but he's your center of focus at that time. So even if you are with your homegirl or your homeboys or your friends or your cousins or whatever, somebody's visiting you in town, that's all great, but still the center of your focus at that time. There's a balance, and I do think there are ways to communicate it. And again, I am still working on it myself, because I'm working on not falling into that sort of like pit, or, we can say trap even, that women fall into, where we feel like we can't share the excitement of liking someone, having a crush, that crush actually panning out. Now you guys are dating, interest is being reciprocated, so on and so forth, right? Women feel like we can't always share that because, again, here comes in that very lacking of mindset, or just here comes in the extreme. Now you feel torn and you're like, oh my God, am I centering this man? Am I becoming to whatever? And find your balance. And everyone's balance is different. Nobody can really tell you what the balance is, or what your balance should be. All they can tell you is their experience and let you know how they balance that. And then you have to put that up against what you have going on in your life and how you balance things in your life. Me personally, I absolutely can do better at the communication. That's where I'm kind of off balance, especially with my friends. But that's also because I have always been a very private person in my dating and relationship life. I've always been. And it's never been just from a place of fear or anything. I'm an only child, right? I was raised an only child. I grew up an only child. So a lot of my friends were family, like my cousins. So these are people that I either was seeing like all the time, or I was only seeing some of the time. So when it came to those things that I felt were more personal in my life, right? I had those cousins that I was like really close to, that I might, talk about this stuff with. But for the most part, it was between me, God, and, my diary and my journals. And I just didn't really see a need. Like, to be quite honest, I just didn't see a need to be talking about it with anybody else. Because I was like, well, I'm dating them, they're dating me, or we're in a relationship. I don't really see why this is be conversation amongst everybody. Like, it was another part of my life. It was another part of my day. Like, I didn't see my relationships as topic of conversation. And then I also feel that because, like I said, pretty much all the relationships I've been in, it wasn't really anything too ridiculous. Of course, not of course, but, I've had less than favorable experiences with men. Yes. Most of that was like in college. And then again, I was in more direct proximity with people to maybe gab about it with. But once I ended those relationships, right, and entered into new and better ones, or started having better dating experiences, again, I was like, well, ain't much to talk about. Everything's great. Like, or like everything's going pretty well. I don't really have much to report on. But what I'm finding as a woman in interpersonal relationships and, in my late 20s, about to enter my 30s, and these really being my adult friendships, my adult sisterhood, is, for many, when you don't share that information, it can feel like a betrayal, or it can feel like secrecy, or it could feel like you don't want these people or these other women, right, in your business like that. And it's like, I'm not even thinking like that. I'm just thinking like, what is there to say? Especially if the experience is pretty much going really well. All I'm really going to say is like, yeah, we're doing great. Like, he's great. I'm enjoying it. I don't think it's much else to say, because for me, I feel that the relationship that I'm having with a man is between myself and that man. I don't think there's much else for us to talk about with other people unless we truly, truly are seeking counsel on our relationship, or seeking counsel on, a dating experience, a courtship experience. But then when you are seeking counsel, there's maybe only one or two people that you're going to. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. That'll be another episode for itself. But it's just like, I never really saw the need to make it commonplace, casual conversation amongst my friends. And even when I was younger, I've always noticed that kind of becomes a point of contention within friend groups, and even in my personal friend groups and friendships, especially when I was like younger and I had like kind of larger, friend circle. You kind of like travel in packs. It's like 8 of y'all. There's like 5 of y'all, right? I always was kind of just like, oh yeah, no, and everybody was like, well, why you keeping secrets, or why you don't want to share with us, or you think we gonna be? And it's like, I don't think any of that. I just think that I'm enjoying this experience, and I don't have much else to say, but I'm enjoying this experience. I really don't want to do a rundown on the day I had with this man. That was between us. Like, that was the day we had. I don't see a need to talk about it beyond that. So again, that's another thing that I am finding my balance on, and I am working through. And so when you're dating and abstaining, I know a lot of women feel like there's just zero men left on the planet who would actually wait for you or wait with you. And all that I have to say to that is, again, like I said, when I show up to a date or when I am returning and reciprocating interest that a man has expressed, the conversation of, engaging in that activity doesn't really come up often, not very, very early on, because if it does come up very, very early on, I will say that that's something that I just take note of. I don't immediately judge or, go red flag or yellow flag or anything, because I understand people have already had their experiences. People have already been through whatever they've been through. People also only know what they know and how to move with folks. As the elders say, right, or as everybody has been saying, you teach people how to treat you. You teach people how to speak to you. You teach people, just how to move with you. So in my experience, especially if a guy brings that up really early in conversation, I just always politely respond, I think it's far too early for us to be having that conversation. I'm enjoying our time together. This has been a wonderful whatever number date we're on, right? Or just whatever wonderful experience we're having if we're in a more social setting and there's shared company. And I'll just say, I think it's far too early for us to be having this conversation. I've really been enjoying ABC 123. And I feel that when the time comes for us to really discuss that, we will both know and we will have that conversation. And to be honest, that pretty much shuts it down until it really is time to have that conversation. It pretty much shuts things down until we are really in a situation where okay, we getting close, or we getting kind of hot and heavy with the hand holding and the heavy petting and things like that. And we are also in our own privacy with one another, right? So that's how I handle that. I'm sure that there are other ways that other people handle it, and may those ways, be revealed to you so you can have kind of a toolbox of phrases to use if you feel like someone's kind of asking you about that a little too early and you are abstaining. Now, I've had a boyfriend actually while abstaining, and we did not engage in that activity at all. And that was my choice. Again, hindsight 2020. Glad I made that decision. And when I'm dating, I'll say this, as I get into seriously dating a man, so okay, he's expressed interest, we've been out together in a few social settings, right? Now it's time for the first date, second date, third date, fourth date, whatever. We've gone on more formal dates, a planned activity is happening, things like that. When the conversation arises, right, because it really is time to have the conversation in the sense of we're getting close physically and in terms of just how we are expressing intimacy and romance with each other. Again, once people kind of realize, you're really not about to, what I'm saying? We have the conversation. And again, I don't say too much. It's not a whole paragraph that needs to be said to them. It doesn't need to be word vomit. I keep it really short and simple, and I just say, truthfully, I'm not comfortable in us doing much more than what we're doing right now, and I hope that you can respect that. I look forward to us continuing to get to know each other. I've really been enjoying our time getting to know each other, and I really appreciate you respecting my boundary thus far. Now that I've expressed that it is a clear boundary and that we won't be going further than this until we are. Now, here's where there are some caveats and nuances. If we're not already in a committed relationship, then I will express, until we are in a committed relationship and a moment arises where we need to revisit this conversation, or quite frankly, until I'm married. I never say until we're married. I just say until I'm married, to make it very clear that this is something that I have decided that I am now reserving for marriage. I won't be going any further than where we are right now. I'm dating right now. I'm dating a few men right now. And so far, that conversation has been great. Nobody has any issues. Still have dates to go on, So I think the whole thing about dating and abstaining is, I don't really want to say so much, oh, it's your confidence and you have to be whatever. Like, I mean, sure, whatever. Like, I guess, yeah, you have to have high confidence and everything. But I also think you just have to stand firm in your boundaries, which actually can be scary, which can make your confidence waver, which can make you, quite anxious. But at the end of the day, if you've decided that you want to wait for a marriage, you want to prepare for a marriage, and a part of that for you is reserving that, then that's what you do. And then if you do get into a committed monogamous relationship and you do decide that you want to do that, then that's also your choice. And that's totally fine. People do that. And then in their relationship, they also decide, hey, actually, we want to get married and we feel that we need to stop engaging in this and take that out of our relationship until we are married. People do that as well. Hey, the only right way is the way that you feel led to do, that you are most comfortable with. That's the right way, right? That's the right way. People talk about, the biblical way to do things and ABC 1, 2, 3. We all know that, right? We all know that. But to give you some peace and some grace, if you're just uncomfortable, then just don't do something. And for me, that's also a part of my abstinence practice. It's been a way for me to also just honor my comfort levels and just where I am at whatever point I am in my life. If I'm just not comfortable doing that, I'm not doing it. I'm just not doing that. And if ever a man is like, well, I just can't, that's a no for me, then that is fine, because my husband will be totally okay with it. You know what I mean? Like, I think it was a young lady on TikTok who said that and kind of got the girl started on that. But it's true. Like, would your husband say that to you? Would your husband do that to you? Again, now, y'all, within context, right? Context is everything. But, would your husband do that? And one of my kind of hard, like, would my husband do that is, my husband would never be not okay with me wanting to wait until we are married. And that is what it is. Like, now that's one thing where I'm like, now for real, like for real, my husband would not be uncomfortable with that. So should I be dating a man and a situation arises where it's really time for us to have that conversation and he tells me that's just something he can't do, well, then that will be the last date, right, that I go on with that man, and I will express gratitude and thankfulness for that experience, right? Because now I've gained a lot more new information. I've learned more about the kind of man that I do like and desire, and traits and ABC and 1, 2, 3. But now I know for sure that man is not my husband, and we move on. And I can speak this way because, again, I practiced it for 5 years, and I'm back at it at a year. And what I feel abstinence has given me is way better discernment. Oh my goodness. It's given me way better discernment. I look at abstinence as a practice as well. It absolutely is a practice. That's why I'm like, if you're abstaining for a number of months and then you stop, you are okay. Like, you're okay. Like, you'll be all right, right? Just make sure you're having necessary conversations. Make sure you're being safe. Make sure you're doing the best you can with the information that you have at that time. Okay? But you are all right. You can begin the practice again. And so as I'm beginning the practice again, and I'm almost a year in again, discernment becomes better, right? Discernment becomes better. And I think even the kind of man that you are attracted to will change. Like, I think the overall energy and spirit about yourself changes when you practice abstinence. And I mean, like, when you intentionally practice abstinence, not, you know what I mean? Like, not that you practice abstinence because you're just not dating anybody at the moment. So it's like, well, you're just not doing that right now because you're not seeing anybody. No, like, you might meet a person and that person could ask you out on some dates and start courting you. And then after whatever amount of time they ask you to be in a relationship, and you're not doing it, even that. right? Intentionally practicing it is a practice. It is a discipline. And I really hope that I've motivated somebody listening to this episode. I just wanted to give you guys some context. If you've enjoyed this episode and you want to hear way more details about my experience, right? Go to the description, click that first link, and that will take you to my podcast. I have over, at this point, I believe 2 years or maybe 2.5 years of a backlog that way more details, way more information, a lot more of my experiences, direct dating experiences and everything that's on the podcast. But I wanted to just bring it over to YouTube because as I'm editing my vlogs, I'm realizing this is the conversation also coming up in my vlogs. And I didn't want y'all to be like, wait, what is she talking about? Or like, where's this like energy coming from? And like how did we get here? Like, we've been here, we've been here. It just wasn't super on my channel, at least not in recent time. I do believe I have some older episodes. Yes, I do. I have older episodes of the podcast up on my channel. But again, those episodes are from at least 1.5 years ago now. And I've had so many more experiences since then, right? I've shared so much more since then. I've provided a lot of resources and education since then. But that all exists over on my podcast channels. Again, While We Wait, the podcast before the marriage is available literally everywhere that you find podcasts. And if there's a podcast platform that you use and you cannot find the podcast, let me know and I'll make sure I get up there.